Hey everybody, it's Bradford, your carnivore curmudgeon, and it's been a minute, but yeah, another video coming up that's a little bit unusual. Oh, by the way, still a carnivore, still not a curmudgeon, mostly. Today we're going to make Beaver andouille sausage. Now, don't tune out. You might want to know how to make andouille sausage, and I just happen to use beaver meat this particular time. Now, you'll have to bear with my voice. I've had a virus for about a week, and yes, I know I sound like Rudolph when they put the fake nose on him. But yeah, here's my beaver meat. There's the tail, and my son in law harvested this beaver. It was a nuisance on the property, kept messing some things up. A lot of nice fat in there, but that's not the focus of this particular video. What we're going to do is we're going to take this beaver and process it the best I can. Now, I will tell you up front, this is not a masterclass in how to process a beaver. There are many, many videos on how to clean, how to process and cut up a beaver. I would be careful about what I Google. You know, if you Google how to eat beaver, how to clean a beaver, you never know, what you might get. And watching some of those videos is how I learned to do this. This is my first time. The one thing that I did learn is that these things are just chock full of glands. Of course, the castor glands that are the most notable in a beaver, but there are a bunch of other glands in this thing too, and you really kind of got to watch out. So that's what I did. I took a bunch of this fat off. And I kept most of it for rendering because I understand that beaver fat is actually very nutritious and very tasty. So that's coming up. I don't know if I'll do a video on it, but I'll be doing that later. But once I got it all taken apart, it kind of looked like this. I took as much usable meat off of it as I could, but I did save the legs for putting into a crock pot, which I understand is delicious. And when it was all said and done, I got just over 4 pounds of grindable beaver meat. And then, the rest I put in the freezer in vacuum packs to save for another time. So to the beaver meat that I reserved for grinding for sausage, I'm going to add some pork. I'm going to pat it dry. It's just a pork shoulder. I got in there and got the fattiest part I could because I don't know if you noticed, but that beaver meat, once I took the top fat off of it, it was actually quite lean and deep red, really beautiful meat, that beaver meat. And so, I bought a pork shoulder, and I needed 1.5 pounds, so I cut 1.5 pounds of the fattiest part off for it. And then the rest of it, while I was making sausage, I just threw the rest of that pork shoulder right in to the good old Instant Pot and made some very delicious pulled pork. Added a little bit of homemade chicken stock, and then I put in just a couple of pinches of salt, and that's really all it needed. And so for this amount, I cooked this pork shoulder in the crock pot, or in the Instant Pot. If you have one of these, and if you haven't done this, it's really worth making it this way. But I cooked it for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and then I let it sit and naturally depressurize. I don't know if that's the word, but I let it just sit for about 30 minutes before I took it out. But back to the sausage making. I have here my beaver meat, and what I did is I took 25% of the total weight, the 6 pounds of the combined beaver meat and the pork shoulder. And because andouille sausage is traditionally a rustic, coarse sausage, I decided to take 25% of the total weight of the meat and hand trim it down just as small little cubes as I could to give it some really nice andouille sausage texture. And it took a little bit of time, but I think it was worth it in the end. And for this recipe, I went to kind of an old standby that I refer to a lot when I'm looking for sausage recipes or game recipes, and that is hunter, gatherer, gardener, angler. I forget the name of the whole thing, but it's Hank Shaw is the name of the website, and he has got some fantastic recipes. Whether you're a hunter or not, it's worth checking out his website. He just has just such a great knowledge of how to handle meats and how to make things simple. I think is what I like about it the best. And so here I am, sort of layering this meat in and putting on the seasonings, which again I got from Hank Shaw. I just stuck to the recipe that he had on his website. And once I got it all stirred up, into the freezer it went for, I think, about 45 minutes is how long I left it in there. It really wasn't as cold as I wanted it to be. But, I mentioned I had a virus, and a lot of what you're seeing here is me doing stuff and then taking a break and going and laying down. And then I come back and do another part of it. So about 45 minutes in the freezer, but it probably could have used an hour. Now, the 25% that I cut by hand was not in that mixture that you saw me mixing up with the spices a little while ago, because the directions from Hank Shaw were to mix in the spices and then grind it. Well, I didn't want that 25% ground. I wanted it to be chunky. So I put on my favorite handy dandy cotton gloves that are such a godsend when handling really cold meat. And the meat that I have spiced, now I'm going to run it through the grinder, and some of it I ground twice just because I didn't have the right millimeter of plate that Hank Shaw recommended. So I didn't grind all of it twice, but I threw some of it back through again so that it wouldn't be terribly chunky. I wanted to have the right kind of mixture of textures for this sausage. And when I was done, then I added back that 25% into the mix to give it a good stir and get it coated with all of those spices as well. And once I got it all mixed thoroughly and got it to the right consistency, I did add some water to make it more sticky. Then it was time to put it into the sausage stuffer. I got a 5-pound sausage stuffer here. I had about 6 pounds of meat, so I didn't overfill the first batch just because there was no need. I knew I was going to have to fill it a second time. Got these sausage casings from the sausage maker online, and these were easier to put onto the tube than any sausage casing that I've ever had. I don't know what the difference is, but it really was much more simple. And then it was time to make some sausages. And one of my motivators for making andouille sausage was that my son-in-law and my daughter spent quite a bit of time in Louisiana early in their marriage, and they learned to like Cajun foods and New Orleans, Louisiana foods. Of course, they have their special recipe for gumbo, which I will admit is very tasty. And so I thought they could use this andouille sausage for that purpose. But andouille sausage is good just on its own. I especially like it with some eggs, either stirred into some scrambled eggs or just sliced up and next to some fried eggs. It's a good companion, and I'm sure there are other things that you could tell me about in the comments that andouille sausage is good to use for. Next came about 3 hours on the smoker with some applewood chips, and it came out. These were hot smoked, so they're fully cooked. And after a couple of hours of sitting at room temperature to let them sort of bloom, you can see what a deep red color. The texture is great. It's sort of dry, like an andouille sausage that I'm used to should be, and really a beautiful sausage. And those casings shrunk up nicely and tightly around the sausage. I'm certainly no pro at making sausages, but I do enjoy it an awful lot. So now nothing left to do but give it a taste. And it had a nice firm texture. These little medallions are exactly what I would expect if I bought an andouille sausage at the store to fry up in a pan or to put into, my gumbo or whatever I might be using it for. Had a nice deep red color. But the taste test was problematic because you remember that virus I told you about? Well, it turns out I can't taste anything. The only flavor I can taste right now as of this recording is salt. So it tasted like salt. And then I took it to Mrs. Curmudgeon and I had her try it because, I was trying to get some sort of opinion. And so while Mrs. Curmudgeon is not a fan of natural casings, she did say it had a nice heat. It was a nice balanced flavor, and she never would have known it was beaver meat if she didn't know it was beaver meat. So there you go, a little twist on something traditional using beaver meat for andouille sausage. I would encourage you to explore and to get creative. I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing you next time, and eat some meat.